Let's talk about the Houston Texans. This is the video about the trade with Laremy Tunsil being traded to the Washington Commanders. I will talk about the Commanders in the separate video. This is more so for the Houston Texans. I wanted to come out and make a video when this trade first happened. Now we have to go back to a week ago. It was reports being pushed out that the Houston Texans wanted to make a major move regarding their offensive line, not bringing in talent, but in terms of moving on from talent. And everyone thought about Laremy Tunsil. But you also were thinking about Kenyon Green. Kenyon Green has not been a good starting lineman since they selected him in the first round many years ago. But they moved on from Laremy Tunsil first. And let's start off with this trade. Laremy Tunsil was a very good tackle for the Houston Texans for many years. He started his career off with the Miami Dolphins. We know why he slipped in the NFL draft in the first round. He was still a first round pick, but it was a smoking video. Someone tried to basically have a "we got you" moment. And it really didn't work out. It costed him some money, but not too much money. Whatever he missed on draft day with him sliding in the first round, and he was still a top pick in the first round, he made back with the Houston Texans. He was a very good offensive lineman. The problem was this with Laremy Tunsil over the last 2 years. Has been able to stay healthy and a lot of penalties. He's been a holding machine over the last 2 years. And the false starts were getting ridiculous. He was easily their best offensive lineman, but that's not saying much with the Houston Texans line. The Houston Texans have one of the worst offensive lines in the NFL, and it is so weird because their defensive front seven is so ferocious, but they can't figure out the offensive side of the ball just yet. They are still stuck in this mini rebuild phase because the offensive line was still an issue with Deshaun Watson. That's why they made the move to go out there and bring in Laremy Tunsil. And they have tried to put draft picks in this offensive line with players like Blake Fisher, Kenyon Green, going out there and getting Laremy Tunsil many years ago. But it hasn't stuck just yet for the Houston Texans. And you also made some trades here and there to put more veterans on the offensive line. It hasn't worked out just yet. This is why they fired Bobby Slowick. Bobby Slowick hit a major wall in year number 2 with CJ as a play caller. Was it all on him? No, because the offensive line is terrible and CJ did have a sophomore slump. But Bobby Slowick, he has some good games this year that he called up the right type of plays. I go back to that Kansas City Chiefs game in the playoffs. He has some good moments in that matchup. But the blitz protection wasn't there. The offensive line protection in general was not there. So they moved on from Bobby Slowick. You're bringing in a brand new offensive coordinator. You have to be careful here because you made the NFL playoffs not once, but twice with CJ and Bobby Slowick in back-to-back years. But I trust the Miko Ryans. Laremy Tunsil is going to have a good career with the Washington Commanders. I talked about the injuries. I talked about the holding penalties and the false start penalties. All of that is true. But another reason why the Houston Texans moved off of him is not because he's just regressing as a tackle. He is due a lot of money with the remaining years of his contract. The Houston Texans reportedly, they are gearing up to paying Derek Stingley Jr. in the future. Now you are still a ways away from paying CJ and Will Anderson. You can exercise the 5th-year option for both of those players. They were both first-round picks. But you're going to have to pay Derek Stingley Jr. a lot of money. He's easily one of the best defensive players in the NFL. Forget just cornerback. I'm talking about just being a strict defensive player. He's amazing. But you need to put more pieces on this offensive line. We've seen this the last 2 years, the first 2 years of CJ's career. He's had a lot of success. That first year when he was a rookie, he went out there. It was a great rookie season. One of the best rookie seasons you will ever see. He did that with being one of the most pressured, most hit, and most sacked quarterbacks in the NFL. And what did they do in year number 2? They try to bring in some more veteran players. They try to invest talent into the offensive line. He was the second most sacked quarterback in the NFL next to Caleb Williams. Hell, he even missed time his rookie season with a concussion because of an injury that he suffered against the New York Jets. And the offensive line let him down in that matchup. The one nerve-wracking part about this, you move on from your veteran left tackle, and I understand why. You move on from him. It's not easy to just go into the first round or the second round and just bring in a tackle that can play right now, because if Blake Fisher is going to be your starting right tackle, you're in trouble. He is terrible. He's not a good starting offensive lineman. Now, Titus Howard, he's a very good pass protector. Against the run, that's not his strong suit. But hopefully the offensive line coaching can be better. The brand new offensive coordinator, he can bring in some better plays for you. You can be more creative pushing the ball down the field with CJ and adding in Christian Kirk. The Houston Texans, they're trying to make the right moves right now, but you have to be careful by making moves like this. I agree with the move, but at the same time, you have to be cautious. It takes offensive linemen time to develop. If you think quarterbacks take time to develop in the NFL, you haven't seen anything just yet with the tackle position. Most tackles don't hit their stride until year 3 and year 4. You'll have a few exceptions like a Joe Alt. They'll come out rookie season, they're dominant, but that's very rare. Tristan Wirfs for the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, one of the best tackles in the league, came in his rookie season, solidified himself. But that is very, very rare. You can't just expect for a young kid to come in and just say, you know what? Go out there and guard Khalil Mack. Go guard Max Crosby. Go guard TJ Watt. That's a tough situation. But the offensive line, they have to play together as a unit. It was too many times last season they're playing as individuals. Miscommunication at the offensive line. This offensive line from last season and even the year before against twists and against stunts and against certain blitzes, they just couldn't pick them up. The athleticism was not there. The communication was not there. And you saw CJ get hit a lot. And you saw him have some nice plays against the blitz also. That is just how great that he is. Hopefully they can fix the offensive line, but I'm not going to come on here and say that I have that much confidence in this line moving forward, especially without Laramie Tunsil. But long term, they should be okay. The one thing that Nick Caserio has done over the last 4 to 5 years is put the best talent on the field that he can. He hired DeMeco Ryans. He went out there, he brought in CJ. He made the move to bring in Joe Mixon. He drafted Nico Collins. Brought in Dalton Schultz, who was a very good tight end in CJ's rookie season. So I trust him, but it takes time for offensive linemen to develop. But it's more than just the offensive line with the Houston Texans, because like I mentioned before, you traded Kenyon Green, which was a great move, by the way, to move off of him. You traded him to the Philadelphia Eagles. Now watch him become a star guard in the NFL because he's playing with the Philadelphia Eagles. That's usually how things go. The Philadelphia Eagles have a great culture with their offensive line coaches, and they just know how to go out there and coach players up to the next level on the O-line. But you traded him for C.J. Gardner-Johnson. Now, C.J. Gardner-Johnson, he thought that it was April Fool's. He thought that Harry Roseman was messing with him. That was not the case. C.J. Gardner-Johnson is a very good playmaking safety. Had a solid season, 6 interceptions, 12 pass deflections. Before I really get in depth with the offense and the Christian Kirk trade, I want to talk about the full defense for a second. You bring in C.J. Gardner-Johnson. You have Kalen Bullock from last season. He had 5 interceptions, 11 pass deflections. You have Kamari Lassner, who was a true number 2 next to Derek Stingley Jr. He had 3 interceptions, 10 pass deflections. The Houston Texans against the pass and against the run and total defense, they were easily top 5. One of the best defenses in the NFL consistently because you have the defensive head coach and DeMeco Ryans. We saw this happen in year number 1 with him. Now, they were struggling with the number 2 cornerback position, who's going to play alongside Derek Stingley Jr. You go into the NFL draft, you draft Kamari Lassner, very good player, and you bring over Jeff Okudah. Now, Jeff Okudah, he's not going to be good on a week-to-week basis, but he's solid enough to go out there and give you some good moments. He's a rotational cornerback. That's what he is. The Detroit Lions selected him in the first round many years ago. He dealt with injuries. He will never be a top starting cornerback in football. But he's a very good rotational guy to have on the back end. And you have a ferocious front 7 with Will Anderson and Danielle Hunter. Danielle Hunter, you could have made the case. He could have been in Defensive Player of the Year conversations. 12 sacks on the year, 1 forced fumble. Will Anderson, 11 sacks, 1 forced fumble. And then you have Azeez Al-Shaair. I know that he gets a bad rep because he's a dirty player. He had the hit on Trevor Lawrence. But he's a solid linebacker to have also. And you have Henry To'oTo'o. And you have Christian Harris. You have a lot of good players on this defense. So expect for the defense to continue to get better. And you're adding in playmakers on the back end that can take the football away. But you can't neglect your offense. You cannot neglect that offensive line. I love the defensive moves that they have made over the last 2 years. But you need to invest in that offensive line. Now back to the offense. Because they made a trade to bring in Christian Kirk from the Jacksonville Jaguars. The Jaguars are going to release him. He would have been a free agent. He could have picked where he wanted to go. This is a rare situation to where you see an in-division trade. The Jacksonville Jaguars, they were done with him. They brought in a brand new head coach. You look at Liam Cohen. He got rid of him, and he got rid of Evan Ingram. Christian Kirk is a solid number 2 wide receiver. He's not a great number 2 because he can't stay healthy. And that's the one thing with Christian Kirk. I don't love this move, but it's an okay move, in my opinion. Maybe he goes out there, maybe he has over 800 receiving yards. We saw what he was able to do in that first season with Trevor Lawrence. He gave them good production, but he was an overpaid wide receiver at the time. They paid him like he's a true number 1. He's not. In this system with Nico, he should be able to thrive, but this is the problem with Christian Kirk. He hasn't been able to finish the last 2 seasons because of injuries. And the Houston Texans wide receivers, they have been dealing with injuries. Nico was on pace to lead the league in receiving yards. He hurt his hamstring. He missed significant time. But you brought in Stephon Diggs. Very good move to bring him in from the Buffalo Bills. In theory, he tears his ACL. Non-contact. Maybe you want to go out there. Maybe you want to re-sign him. I look at Stephon Diggs. They use him as an intermediate threat. Stephon Diggs is not a deep threat, and use him a lot underneath also. Veteran wide receiver, but I don't know how much juice that he has left in the tank. Not to say that he's a washed-up veteran, but I look at Stephon Diggs. Even when he was on the field with Nico, Nico was clearly the true number 1, and Stephon Diggs was the number 2. You want to have a rotation to where you have Nico Collins? Now, Nico Collins has been healthy in the past. This year was an outlier, in my opinion. He hurt his hamstring. But you want to depend on Stephon Diggs, who's getting older, coming off an ACL injury. You want to depend on Christian Kirk, who has been injury-prone in the past, because Tank Dell, he's not coming back. Tank Dell is going to miss all of this upcoming season because of that brutal knee injury that he suffered against the Kansas City Chiefs in the regular season. You have John Mechie. John Mechie made some good plays, but I don't think that he's a consistent wide receiver that you can go to in times of need. So it's a lot of question mark with the Houston Texans right now at that wide receiving position. But this is why you have the NFL draft. To draft those offensive linemen, to bring in yet another wide receiver. And you have Joe Mixon at the running back position. And Joe Mixon is a very good player. Joe Mixon also missed time. He hurt his ankle against the Chicago Bears. But as soon as he came back, you saw that rushing threat be there yet again. He had 1,000 rushing yards, 11 rushing touchdowns. He averaged 4 yards a carry. A very good running back to have. He's a veteran. And you can get another running back in this draft class. So trading Laramie Tunsil for that second round pick and for some more picks are definitely going to help you out, because you can maneuver your way up in the first round. And if you want to move up and have 2 first round picks, you can maneuver your way down in the first round also. It just depends on how the Houston Texans view the board. But this is a very good draft class for defensive line and for offensive linemen. But I'm worried about the Houston Texans with that offensive line and with those wide receivers behind Nico Collins. Stephon Diggs is still a free agent. They can go out there. They could bring in someone like Amari Cooper. They could bring in someone like Brandon Cooks, who got to play with the Houston Texans. It's not a guarantee that you have to go out there and just bring back Stephon Diggs. But the Houston Texans, I do believe that they are in good hands with Nick Caserio. And I look at this division. It's not the toughest division in football. The Jacksonville Jaguars and Trevor Lawrence, we'll see if they can be an upcoming team with Liam Cohen. He got the most out of Baker Mayfield. We'll see if he can get the most out of Trevor Lawrence. You have the Tennessee Titans. It seems like they're rebuilding. They don't have a true quarterback. You have Will Levis still on your roster. They may select Abdul Carter with the first pick. They may go with Cam Ward. We'll see what happens. I look at the Houston Texans as a team that should be able to go out there and win this division 3 years in a row. But winning the division is not good enough anymore. You have to make a deep postseason run. The Houston Texans went all in this previous offseason to make a Super Bowl push, bringing in a veteran like Stephon Diggs, bringing in a veteran like Joe Mixon, and shredding up that defense that should have pushed you forward. But there was a lot of times throughout this season to where the Houston Texans, they just didn't look right on the offensive end. Your defense was dominant. You don't want to have this same movie playing over and over again. And I know the ownership with the Houston Texans, they got to see this up close and personal. It was a quarterback in this division many years ago. Let's go back a few years. Andrew Luck, the Indianapolis Colts, all world, had some of the most potential you will ever see. Sweet throws, could bounce off of tacklers, but he got hit over and over and over again. And those injuries forced him to retire. We have seen this with quarterbacks in the past. If you do not protect your quarterback and you cannot establish the line of scrimmage, you're not going to win many football games in the NFL. And I'm surprised the Houston Texans have gotten this far with bad offensive line play. Even when their top 2 tackles were out and during his rookie season, CJ had some solid moments then. especially against the Baltimore Ravens. And I look at them going against the Baltimore Ravens. One of the biggest reasons to why the Baltimore Ravens always bully around the Houston Texans, for one, the offensive line is not good enough. And number two, the wide receivers can't get open against press coverage, besides Nico Collins. You need more depth at the wide receiving position. You need more offensive linemen. But let me know in the comment section below, how do you view the trade with Laremy Tunsil going to the Washington Commanders, and what is truly next for CJ and the Houston Texans? If you're new to the channel, hit the subscribe button. If you like the video, hit the like button. Most importantly, want each and every last one of you guys stay safe, stay positive. Thanks for watching the video, guys. God bless.